Probably with the oars.
What is it?
Sorry.
It's preview.
Video number 1.
Will you control it from here on top? You would operate the camera with me?
What's that?
I want to see it.
Okay.
One small change here, right on it. Rabbi Schneinzeld, Executive Director of the Schneinzeld Center.
He's rallied many enemies.
Yes.
I'm not gonna put on that.
I know. Hello. Okay. Okay. On the YouTube page.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Gala for CAJAC, the Community Alliance of Jewish-Affiliated Cemeteries. My name is Ron Burton, and I am honored to be hosting tonight, here live from the Katz household in White Plains, New York. A lot of commotion. We have Chava and Daisy and Noah and Aunt Meredith also in attendance. I think it's going to be a great night tonight. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight and also for your incredible support of this organization. Incredible support of this organization. From what I understand, we have $100,000 in gifts and contributions for tonight in honor of Gary Katz and the 13 years, the B'nai Mitzvah of CAJAC. It's going to be a great night tonight. I would also like to say thank you to the UJA Federation of New York for being an incredible support to CAJAC. And I think you'll enjoy tonight throughout learning more about the organization and Gary Katz's really labor of love in terms of his founding and honoring of this great cause. So with that, I'd like to start the evening off with Rabbi Joseph Potassnik, who is the Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis. He's also a chaplain of the New York City Fire Department and he's the co-host of Religion Online, the longest-running radio show on WABC New York. And he's a CAJAC board member. So without further ado, I give you Rabbi Joseph Potassnik.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your support of a great organization named CAJAC. It is said that when we are reunited with loved ones in the next world, and they ask us, what did you do after we left you? We will respond, we never forgot you. To me, that's the raison d'etre of CAJAC. We never forget those who may have been forgotten by others. I remember as a young boy when I went to the cemetery with my parents, they would put stones on the graves of loved ones, but then they did something else. They would go around and see graves where there were no stones on the monuments. And they said, we have to remember them too. And I would say, but you didn't know them. And they would answer, well, we have a responsibility to them. The word for responsibility in Hebrew, achrayut, has the word acher, which means other. We have a responsibility to the other, especially to the other who is forgotten. Some years ago, I was officiating at the funeral of someone I knew. And at the end of the service, I asked people to take shovels of earth and place them on the coffin. A young boy came over to me and he said, Rabbi, I know why we do this. When we come into this world, there should be loving hands around us. When we leave this world, there should be loving hands around us. To me, that's a beautiful explanation, which once again reinforces this message. We cannot forget them. Thank you, CAJAC. Thank you for remembering those who may have been forgotten. Thank you all for supporting this great organization.
I am Marcia Eisenberg, and I am so proud to have helped CAJAC incorporate 13 years ago. CAJAC has grown and becomes only better over these years at helping our synagogues and protecting our Jewish areas and cemeteries so that important tasks of proper Jewish burials can be done appropriately. I'm personally pleased because I will be retiring soon from JCRC, and CAJAC has become my succession plan. CAJAC will continue to administer and protect the two Bronx synagogues and their members, which I have taken care of for 21 years. May CAJAC be successful in its very important mission for the Jewish community for many, many years. Mazel tov.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Marcia. If you're watching, I remember when we had lunch at the Wolf and Lamb, 10 or 20 years ago, and all of your great work at the JCRC. Thank you so much for your kind words. CAJAC, I mean, you're all here. You've supported this organization. I heard a little bit more about it from Gary Katz when he was talking to Rabbi Meni Ben Israel, and it's incredible. It's one of those things where we've all heard about the Hebrew Free Burial Society, but CAJAC's work is essential and doesn't go unnoticed and serving a great purpose here in the tri-state. And so with that, let's learn more about CAJAC.
Oh, la da 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 da, Hello there. Congratulations to CAJAC on 13 wonderful years. I'm Mike Wassman, president of Greater Middlesex Jewish Cemetery Management Corporation, a nonprofit involved in central New Jersey, small synagogue cemeteries for the most part. It's been such an enormous support to have the depth of knowledge, the breadth of experience, and the great camaraderie of the CAJAC, especially Rabbi Andrew Schultz and Alan Friedman, always there for us. Yasher Koach, which means not congratulations for what you've done in the past, but may you have strength to keep going this way in the future.
Thanks, Mike. One of the things that they never told me about was that usually when I MC galas, there are a lot of people in the audience, not so many today, and the crew, Tab and Steve, are shooting the breeze back and forth with me, and that's actually keeping me going. They're saying, Ron, no matter what they're tweeting out about you, you're doing a good job, so keep going. So that's what I'll do. Our next speaker is Alan Friedman. He is the CAJAC board president. He's a financial analyst, an expert witness in civil litigations, and also taking on this labor of love, this chesed shel emet. So without further ado, here's Alan Friedman.
Good evening. I am Alan Friedman, and as board president of CAJAC, I would like to thank you all for joining us to celebrate our B'nai Mitzvah with our special honoree, Gary Katz, our founder. Without his vision and persistent efforts over many years, CAJAC would simply not exist. But now I would also like to recognize the tremendous effort of our event committee, board members Howard Feinberg, Andrew Eisner, and Heidi Silverstone, all under the tireless direction of our executive director, Rabbi Andrew Schultz. Thank you so much to this team. As you have seen and heard tonight, the Jewish community has a cemetery problem. I know this firsthand. I have relatives buried at a very old cemetery in Queens, grandparents and great-grandparents. And I felt helpless when I found their graves overgrown with weeds and a monument fallen, with no help from the cemetery owner. Thankfully, CAJAC helped me to find a company to lift the stone and wash it, and to even clean the area around the entire family plot. I'm sure that my grandparents and great-grandparents would be very pleased. That experience motivated me to be a part of this amazing organization that has done so much to restore, advise, and now to manage community cemeteries, many underfunded, undermanaged, and with uncertain future leadership. Most of our funding has historically come from the UJA of New York, the New York Board of Rabbis, and all of the individual members of our board of directors. But now that CAJAC is actively managing cemeteries, our organization needs even more resources. And you here tonight have stepped up to meet that challenge head on. CAJAC has historically run a lean organization and has never had more than one full-time staff member. Board members like Gary Katz are active and unpaid. Accounting services are cost-effectively outsourced. Legal services are provided pro bono by Morgan Lewis Bacchius and by Hartman, Doherty, Rosa, Berman, and Bulbulia. Investment advice pro bono by Klingenstein Fields Advisors. Office space is provided without charge by the New York Board of Rabbis. KJ's halakhic advisor, Rabbi Elchanan Zone, the head of the National Hevra Kadisha, and a leading posek on end-of-life matters, also serves without charge. And even as we bring more cemeteries under our umbrella, we will continue to run a lean organization. Your money will be used to ensure that those cemeteries are well managed, safe for visitors, secure from vandals, and respectfully maintained. And of course, financially viable well into the future. Again, I thank all of you here tonight for your support and generosity. Because of you, we will be able to meet our goals and continue to restore, secure, and sustain our Jewish cemeteries. We thank you for joining with us in this most special mitzvah, a kindness that can never be repaid. Thank you again, and please join us next year, God willing, in person.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Neil Saif, and I am a member of the Board of Directors of the Jewish Cemetery Management Corporation in the heart of New Jersey. I would like to congratulate CAJAC on their B'nai Mitzvah of 13 years. With the recent merger of our organizations into a management services contract, I wanted to personally thank Rabbi Andrew and Alan Friedman and the rest of the organization for partnering in our joint mission to preserve and restore Jewish cemeteries in need. On a very personal note, CAJAC has been assisting our organization in a project near and dear to my heart, in the restoration of my ancestors' cemetery in the Ford section of Woodbridge. After several years of challenges, my ancestors' resting place will now be restored to its original condition, and with the assistance of CAJAC alongside of our board of directors here in New Jersey, I look forward to completing this project and moving on to other projects going forward. Congratulations again.
Thank you, Neil. It is now my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker tonight, Rabbi Meni Evan Israel. Rabbi Evan Israel was ordained by Israel's chief rabbi, Mordechai Eliyahu, and served as a campus rabbi for several years in the United States, Virginia and Maryland to be exact. He currently serves as the executive director of the Steinsaltz Center in Jerusalem, overseeing Rabbi Adin Evan Israel Steinsaltz's institutions worldwide. He's responsible for the completion of the English and French editions of the Steinsaltz Talmud, and most recently the publication of the Steinsaltz Tanakh. He lives in Jerusalem with his wife Liza and their 4 children, and what we should have done was set up the camera on that side to have the Steinsaltz Talmud behind him. There, you may see a passing reference to an Art Scroll edition. Just go over that. Focused on the Steinsaltz edition, and focus on this guy right here with a Hall of Fame beard and a passion for Scotch. Rabbi Evan Israel, it's great to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here celebrating the Bar Mitzvah, Bnei Mitzvah event of CAJAC. And of course, my dear friend Gary and his family. In 1898, the Kaiser, William II, came to visit Jerusalem. He spent a couple of days in Jerusalem seeing the holy sites, visiting with Herzl and other members of the Jewish community and other dignitaries from all cultures and walks of life in the city. In his last moment of visit, he started talking to the people to try to figure out who was the really moving power behind the city. So he asked around, and as traditional in those days, he was wondering about the guilds, the associations. Who is the strongest association in Jerusalem? So without hesitation, the Jewish community and their representative said, the dead. The dead are the strongest guild in Jerusalem. Even today, when you count the city of Jerusalem, almost from every direction, the first thing you see is its cemeteries. You have the large one, the small one. Even in my own neighborhood, I live in the center of town, there are a few of those. Traditionally, the idea of preserving and keeping a cemetery alive is something that we as Jews have to question and ask, why do you need to do this? What is the purpose? What are we intending to do in this action? So I'd like to start with a personal story. My father, may he rest in peace, passed away a year and a half ago. In the Shiva, in the week of his mourning, we as the family sat together to find out what is exactly the text that we're going to write in the matzeva, on the tombstone. And I remember that for the first time, I actually thought, how peculiar is this? I have to sit down here and summarize a man, was a giant of a man, and to describe his best abilities, the best way to describe him. What is the right attitude? What is the right titles to use? As one of the reporters in Israel said, it's very interesting to see that this is the tombstone of Rabbi Schneinzeld, and both things are not mentioned. Neither that he's a rabbi, nor that he's Schneinzeld. Cemetery, actually, the tombstone actually read my father's first name, Adin Even Israel, and what he did most, continuing to express the work of Judaism. And I realized in that moment it dawned on me that the main purpose that we sitting and writing this text, and it's the main purpose that we actually writing something in the tombstone, is clearly not for the person who departed, which we are hope that they're in a better place, but it's really for us. It's for our memory. Then, almost instantaneously, it occurred to me that my memory, my immediate memory, is something very short. What I remember will last for 50 years, 70 years. How do we make a statement that can last for much longer? And I think that's the main purpose of writing something on the cemetery, or writing something on the tombstone, is to make a statement of what remains, but not just for the present generation, but also for the future. The idea behind keeping, guarding, preserving cemeteries, especially when there's a vibrant Jewish community around, has a tremendous ability to connect not just the past, not just the person who just passed away or the people who passed, but really also the future generations. In Judaism, we're not afraid of death. We're not afraid of the world to come. We are known to believe that what's important is this world, is the action that we take to this place. The action we take in this particular world, it's what's important. The action of taking this kind of movement, this kind of idea, to go behind, to see what needs to be taken care of when nobody else is taken care of. You would think that the memory of people is something that's important enough that everybody will step forward and do it. But as we know from all around the United States, but all around the world, cemeteries, as the Talmud says, chazaka lamet shishtakeach. It's known that eventually the dead have been forgotten. But somebody has to remember. As part of my job is to cultivate the ability of people to give, to donate, to volunteer, to support our organization, but many others. And the dream that every organization has is to find one person that has the bug, that really constantly feels the organization, that his organization become what he volunteered to, what he created, becomes something of his own life. He's becoming the front runner, the lamplighter, the flag holder of said organization. And it's one of the things that I really liked about our about the chairman and honorary today, Gary. The fact that this is his dream, that this is his, in a sense, life mission, is amazing, is astonishing that somebody, even in our time, take the role and making something that maybe other people ignore, maybe other people don't see it, and make it his first priority, something that he cares about so passionately, so warmly. It's, in my view, is very unique. The challenge always will be how we bring this to the future generations. So I think there are a variety of ways of doing it. One of the best ways, as we know, as the CAJAC did, is to bring volunteers, young people, to the cemetery. And it's not just about the cleaning. I know it's very important, keeping the upkeep of it, but it's also maybe to have a conversation with a significant grave, or maybe not a significant grave, of individual that we know about, or maybe you don't know anything about. And writing something about it, talking about it, saying, see, this is the memory that we kept. This is the memory that we're continuing for the next generation. My organization, the Schneinzeld Center, has a motto of let my people know. That's a motto, that's a line that we follow. And I think that's where this kind of organization is connected to what we do. To let people know is not only about the past. It's not only about the future. It's also about the present. And our relationship with the past and the present and the future is completely intimate. And we constantly need to find better ways to bring it. One of the challenges we have in our generation is the indifference. Some people have resentment to religion, resentment to the parent, resentment to whatever excuse they have not to keep, not to observe, not to be part of the community. Any action that we take, from cemeteries to nurseries, that can bring people together, can make something in the heart, that can move forward, that's something that they can see, that they can relate to, something that they can come together. See, I don't have any other reason besides I want to do it for the greater good. It's not only about me. When you're going and help a cemetery that's in a decayed situation, you're not doing it for yourself. You're not gaining anything from it. The only gain you gain from it is to help the rest of society, the rest of the community. That is a challenge, I think, that Gary and, of course, the other members of CAJAC did, and brought this thing together, making sure that this kind of concept of moving forward, finding a place for everybody who wants to join, can find a place. It's not always hard. Sometimes it's by money, sometimes it's by actually walking and visiting, and sometimes even by giving a comment. You're driving around New York, plenty of cemeteries around, and making some comments. You see, this is a cemetery that we as a community took care of. This is the place I would like you to come and visit. It's a bit morbid, given, but when you find something in it, there's a tranquility and peace of coming and helping in this kind of situation. So I really like to take the opportunity and really thanks again all the members of CAJAC, especially Gary, this evening, and I wish them a great, great success now and forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi, for those divrei Torah. They were truly inspirational. And I think one thing that you said about Gary and his passion for this work of CAJAC is that it's unique. But interestingly, when I think of unique, one would think that that's his one labor of love. It's his one passion. But I know differently. I know differently because I've been a fellow Schechter and LaFell dad with Gary for probably 15 years or so. And one of the things that I know about Gary is that he brings his passion to many other things. And the school and his family are two very, very important things. When I think of Gary, I think of a selfless person. I think of the person, maybe except for me, who was the loudest cheerer for the LaFell Lions soccer team. I think of Gary playing golf with his son Giddy, and Gary's not that great of a golfer. I want to let you in on a secret, but he does it because he wants to be with his son. He's just an incredibly devoted person who does things when a lot of people don't know the kind of charitable things Gary does. And I'm not going to let you in on that, but I'm going to let you know that on Rambam's ladder of tzedakah, Gary often resides on the top rung. So without further ado, let's learn a little bit more about the honoree with this video.
I grew up in Great Neck, Long Island, and I remember my dad driving me and my whole family in to New York City on the LIE up to the Midtown Tunnel. Right before you get to the Midtown Tunnel, for those of you from the island, you pass through these huge, huge cemeteries. Catholic Church has been around for 2,000 years. People die, they get buried in the cemetery. Catholic Church takes care of them. I thought, okay. When I was around 12, my family went to Israel. And it was really this, other than the cemeteries I'd seen before, it was really the first time I went to a cemetery, certainly a Jewish cemetery. They took us to these big Jewish cemeteries, Har Herzl, and I asked, wow, who are all the people buried here? Jews. Who takes care of it? The government. There are Israeli flags everywhere, and the government takes care of the cemeteries in Israel. I grew up in America. I started losing people in my family, became an adult, and I asked, who takes care of these cemeteries? I went to some pretty huge Jewish cemeteries, some in nice shape, some in not nice shape. And everyone says, oh, it's the owner of the cemetery. No one owns the cemetery. There are people who are paid to work there. But what happens when they run out of money? Whatever money's been put aside for so-called perpetual care, which is the statutory minimum, is not enough to take care of the cemetery. And I learned the cemeteries fall into terrible disrepair.
So in the year 2000, my husband Gary and I moved to New York City, and we joined a really lovely, vibrant congregation. It was a small community of mostly very young parents and some elderly adults. We really loved the synagogue, but it was struggling financially. And one of the reasons that it was struggling financially is it had the responsibility to maintain a very large cemetery called Bayside Cemetery in Queens. This small congregation, struggling congregation, was not able to fully maintain the entirety of this property despite its best efforts. It became something that Gary was very concerned with because he takes very seriously the mitzvah of respect for the dead, of maintaining graves and giving honor to those who've gone.
The truth is that while death and mourning are so central to Jewish ritual life and our communal experience, the responsibility we share to preserve Jewish cemeteries here in the United States never occurred to me until my brother Gary stumbled into trying to help his struggling neighborhood shul on the Upper West Side of Manhattan remain solvent.
And so Deanne Friedman, Ethan Klingsberg, and I got together, and we had the idea of founding an organization called CAJAC to take care of cemeteries here in New York.
This is an exciting day because this is the completion of the first week of our cleanup of this huge, potentially beautiful, but at the same time horrifying cemetery. Horrifying because of how incredibly overrun and abandoned it is. People don't realize that here in the United States, in the middle of Queens, New York, the wealthiest and most free Jewish community in the New York area in the world, is a cemetery, and not just one cemetery, multiple cemeteries like the one you see around me that look as bad as the cemeteries which are abandoned and scattered all throughout the former Jewish communities of Europe that all perished in the Holocaust.
Creating CAJAC was a quintessential example of what makes my brother Gary such an exceptional person and such a mensch. Whether you've dealt with him in business or on a nonprofit board or frankly discussed any matter with him at some length, you instantly recognize that Gary is a keen observer, thinker, and questioner. And one of his great talents is to be able to identify complex problems and then find an elegant solution that not only solves the problem, but creates an even better outcome.
Gary's involvement in CAJAC has influenced our family in many ways. I think that for our children, from a very young age, they learned about cemeteries. They have grown up visiting cemeteries, so they're not afraid of cemeteries. It's not a scary place. It's actually can be a very meaningful and spiritual place. And Gary's taught that to our children.
Every day in morning davening and morning prayers in Birkos HaShachar, there's a part that talks about a list of mitzvos that you can do endlessly that are held in very high esteem. And one of those is Halvayat HaMit, which is to bury the dead, but also can extend to all of the work regarding taking care of those who have passed away. They can't give back to us in the same way we can give to them. And every day when I'm davening in the morning, I think of my father. And I think, wow, this is not something that everybody gets to say they're involved with on a day-to-day basis. I can say that about my family. I could say that about my father. Usually it's the parents who get nachas from their kids, but I get a lot of nachas from my own father to know how involved he is in CAJAC, that he's doing such incredible mitzvos.
My brother Gary brought new meaning to Kavod HaMet and the thankless nature of the act when he began his tireless campaign to honor the memories of the dead by restoring the integrity of their graves, starting at Bayside Queens Cemetery in Ozone Park, Queens. I was also struck by the fact that Gary was embracing a cause that I imagined could be a little bit lonely. I wondered, how is he going to galvanize interest among our peers and our community? Fast forward to a hot Sunday, September 2015, a month before my nephew Giddy's bar mitzvah. I pulled into the parking lot of Bayside Cemetery, Queens, looking for Giddy. And within minutes, I saw, to my surprise, a large, giant bus that Gary had rented, followed by a long caravan of cars. Giddy was beaming. He was joyfully handing out shovels, work gloves, scrub brushes. Gary had inspired his son to take on this amazing cause. I was so proud and grateful to be a part of that day.
Seeing my dad, be involved in CAJAC and want to be a part of that organization, it actually inspired me to do my own bar mitzvah project, where I had a bunch of people and we all together worked on cleaning a cemetery. Volunteering to clean up cemeteries is really meaningful to me because once you're laid to rest, you deserve to be in a place that is, even though you won't see it, but it's pretty and it's beautiful, and having no one keep your headstone clean and, having a cemetery be dirty is something that does not seem something like I would want. So why would somebody else who might have, nobody to care for their headstone, they deserve to have it be cleaned.
I would say the thing I'm proudest of is CAJAC bringing to the attention of the broader Jewish community in New York the fact that an abandoned, underfunded, and decrepit Jewish cemetery is not somebody else's problem. And that is something that has been recognized by the hundreds of volunteers who have personally shown up to clean up cemeteries, by the thousands of people who have donated money to assist in the cleanup of cemeteries, and to the leadership, staff, and donors to UJA Federation of New York, who have taken it upon themselves to not only use their bully pulpit to support CAJAC's work, but to provide critical core funding for our very limited overhead so that we can do the work and honor the respect of those who are buried in our cemeteries. So I want to recognize and thank Rabbi Andy Schultz, who's the executive director of our organization, Alan Friedman for being president for so many years and continuing this year, for Barry Yud for being last year's honoree, and I want to thank all of you for your support and the recognition you've given me and the many others involved in CAJAC's work. It's a great honor to do something which I'm passionate about, and I want to thank you in advance for the future support that I know you'll all be giving to our efforts.
Gary Katz, the founder and soul of CAJAC, has demonstrated in deeds that his work for CAJAC is not only pleasing in the sight of God, but is the essence of Judaism. A hearty mazel tov to Gary and his family.
Mazel tov, Dad. I'm so happy for you and proud of you.
Gary, mazel tov on your honor. I'm really proud of you for the work you've done at CAJAC.
Mazal tov again to Gary on this honor and to CAJAC on reaching its B'nai Mitzvah.
Gary, I want to thank you for leading by example. You continue to inspire all of us. Mazal tov and Yasher Koach.
Dad, I'm really proud of you for doing your best to help the community. I love you.
Wow, what a video. All I can tell you, those of you who are watching this virtually, is that here on Winslow Road in White Plains, New York, there is so much nachas in the living room, you can barely cut it with a knife. You got Chava sitting on Gary's lap. You have Meredith kissing Gary, telling him how proud she is of him. And maybe the coolest thing, Yair is talking about the Birchot HaShachar and saying, yeah, I think of my dad every morning. If only my kids would do something like that. Anyway, we're coming to the climax of the evening. Very excited to introduce Rabbi Andrew Schultz. Andy has been the executive director of CAJAC for 7 years of its existence. He's a musmach of the renowned Rabbi Yechiel After Malik and Kolel HaShachrus LeRabbanus. I hope that pronunciation was adequate or barely adequate. Also serves as a police chaplain for the Fair Lawn Police Department and Elmwood Park Police Department. And he's mutual friends with my good friend Eric Wasser. Without further ado, Andy Schultz. What are we going to do? A little do-si-do. Good to see you, Andy.
Ron, from the moment I met you, I wanted to dance with you. Very special night. I have remarks to share, which I'll do momentarily. But in the meantime, it gives me great nachas, great pleasure to invite Gary to share the podium with me. Hi, everyone. So we as Jews, we have a commitment every day to harnessing holiness and bringing holiness into the world. And how do we accomplish that? We have 613 ways to accomplish that. Gary has successfully brought Kedusha, holiness, into this world through his tireless efforts to support Kavod HaMet, respect and dignity to the deceased. And on a personal note, Gary is the one who hired me during my first tour of duty with CAJAC. As some may know, I was hired in 2010, departed professionally in 2014, remained on the board, and rejoined the professional ranks in 2020. Gary was the one who brought me in, was a tremendous mentor and friend, beat me up from time to time, maybe more than time to time, but it was tough love. I learned a tremendous amount through our friendship. Now we talk about holiness and harnessing that holiness. And once a week, Friday afternoon, Erev Shabbat, we usher in our Sabbath, the holiest day of the week. And we do so with the recitation of Kiddush, which is the prayer over the wine, and is made at the Shabbat table. And when Shabbat leaves us, we usher it out with Havdalah, and we say, Hamavdil ben Kodesh lechol, separating the sacred from the profane. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to present Gary and of course his family with a beautiful Havdalah set, so that each week when you make Havdalah as a family, And I suspect that you guys sing together. You seem like a
We
singing
do.
song
We're
sort of
singer.
family.
We're a singing family.
Many of us just go through it, but I get that impression. So that each time you make Havdalah, you'll think about the holiness that you have continued to bring into this world. You will think about what you're going to do during that week to make a difference. You'll think about the Kiddush Hashem that you make on a daily basis. And I am proud to call you my friend. I am proud to call you a brother Jew. And I thank you for everything you have given to me personally and to our great organization.
Thank you.
I hope we continue to make you proud.
Thank you. Well, is this the time where I get to say something, the rebuttal?
Yeah.
So,
My pleasure.
Thank all of you, especially the intrepid folks who are still watching. It's a little weird and awkward to be honored, especially for something that everyone says, oh, we want to honor you and thank you because you're doing a mitzvah, which you don't get thanked for. So it's a little weird. I am passionate about this cause. I want to thank many people, particularly tonight, Rabbi Meni Evan Israel. And the reason why I want to thank him is not only because he came in from Israel in part to do this and coordinated with it, but for reminding me why I do this crazy thing. And I hope reminding all of you, which is that, of course, as Jews, we don't worship or fetishize the dead. What we do is worship God by remembering them and the best things in their life and try to take those things, imbue ourselves with them, and God willing, pass it on to our children so that everyone's lives, the story of the Jewish people and the story of the world is always improving. We have some setbacks from time to time, but as long as we learn and remember the best of our ancestors, we will always ensure an even better future. So thank you, Rabbi, for your words and your Devar Torah. I'll cut this a little short and not thank everyone. Obviously, I want to thank Andy. The board is amazing. It's a group of people. Why I get all the thanks, I don't know. All I did was get other people to focus on something, and they're the ones who do all the work. They put together the video. I think Heidi put together the video. I don't know. Alan's words were beautiful. My family is beautiful. Thank you, Diane, Meredith, Wendy, Giddy, Matan, Hava, for encouraging me and only laughing at me a little bit when I talk more about cemeteries. We're driving on a highway and I'm like, oh, remember that cemetery? And I want to thank all of the donors. I mean, to raise, I think we're up to about $110,000 now. To raise over $100,000 is a drop in the bucket for some charities, but not for CAJAC. It's, beyond a record for what we've done, and we're going to put it to amazingly good use. Thank you all. Support CAJAC. And I want to thank the team who put this together, who's standing in front of me. And I am motivated by you all. Thanks for being here.
Mazal Tov again.
Goodbye. Oh, and I want to thank Ron Burton. Ron, come out here. So Ron's the greatest. He's a great MC. And thank you for making us laugh and putting a little lightheartedness into this event. And I am proud also that my kids think of me every day, hopefully somewhat positively.
I think they do.
All right. Good night, everyone. What are we doing?
My speech.
Oh, you have a speech?
I do.
I thought you were done.
I'm the Mariano Rivera, for those Yankee fans out there, of this event.
I'm sorry, I thought we had Andy's presentation remarks. Okay, Andy's speech. I'm sorry I said goodnight. Okay.
You have to bring a little bit of humor into everything we do. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. I want to thank Diane and Gary for opening up their beautiful home for this wonderful event. I want to thank Rabbi Evan Israel for coming to us from Yerushalayim, sharing beautiful Divrei Chizuk, words of strength, Divrei Torah, words of Torah. Also want to thank Ron Burton again. You really came through. I knew from our first conversation, Ron's a pretty funny guy, and there were people who said, well, is he going to be appropriate? I said, I get the sense that he'll be appropriate, and he was more than appropriate, so I appreciate it, Ron. I want to acknowledge our friends at Fox Video Productions. We've known Steve for a number of years. If you look on YouTube, you'll see CAJAC's original videos which he did a fabulous job. And so bringing him back to support this event and produce this event was really a no-brainer. I want to also acknowledge the event committee. This type of production really needs the input of people who are committed to it. So in case you didn't hear the first introduction, Rabbi Andrew Schultz, I've been the ED for a number of years. I've been affiliated with CAJAC for 12 of its 13 years. So what makes this night unique? Of course, we've honored Gary. Of course, we are celebrating CAJAC's B'nai Mitzvah. But many of you are aware, maybe aware, possibly aware, that it's Zayin Adar. Right now, it is the 7th day of Adar. Now, what's significant about Zayin Adar? This is both the birthday and the death of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher. This is the day that Hashem, God, performed the burial rites of Moshe Rabbeinu. So many Chevros Kedisha on this day get together because this is the day that the concept of the Chevra Kedisha, the holy society that prepares the dead for burial and fulfills the mitzvah of Chesed Shel Emet, kindness and benevolence, which can never be repaid. But we really learn about the statutory significance of Jewish cemeteries much, much earlier on. In fact, in Parshat Vayera, it describes how Abraham, Avram Avinu, our patriarch, went to great lengths to ensure that he was able to procure a burial site not only for his beloved wife, but for his children and grandchildren. And it's a good story, and I encourage everyone to read it. I'm not going to get into all the details now, but know that the Masorah, the tradition, the transmission of this time-honored commandment began in the very, very beginning of the Jewish Bible. So notwithstanding the halachic, the Jewish law requirement of burial in a Jewish cemetery, let's look at what's transpired over the last 100 or so years. When our forebears emigrated from Eastern and Western Europe, they brought the concept of a burial society. They brought the concept of having an organization, a fraternal order, a lodge that would ensure that the members of the community would be buried. And by the way, in certain cases, even before the synagogue purchased its pews and its ark and its Torahs and its prayer books, they established a cemetery. Because inevitably, every Jewish community needs a cemetery. But those who follow a little bit of our Jewish history know that attrition, demographic shifts, all impacted our congregations, our communities, and in turn, as synagogues shuttered, as societies sold their final grave, and somehow were dissolved into the mists of time, a problem was left. CAJAC began seeking to address the cemetery crisis, seeking to repair, to remediate, to resolve. Today, we've shifted gears. We're not just addressing the crisis, we're working to control the crisis. I'm proud that in the last 18 months, with support from the board, with support from our donors, with support from our volunteers, that we've pivoted from our strong history of helping to recover and to repair distressed cemeteries. Today, I'm proud to share with you that we are now managing, operating, and overseeing 6 Jewish cemeteries. And by the time next March rolls around, when I presume we'll do our annual event, I assume and expect that that number will double. We can't do it without the community. CAJAC represents community. We are the Jewish community's response. And I'm grateful to UJ Federation for incubating the concept of CAJAC and ensuring that we got on our feet. And I thank all of you who are tuning in tonight. I thank everyone who contributed towards this event. Gary mentioned it. We raised unprecedented dollars this evening. And what is it going to do? It's going to perpetuate kavod hamet, dignity and respect for the deceased. And I wish everyone, I think it's fair to do so now, a wonderful Purim, a wonderful Passover to those who celebrate, and may God grant that we continue to go from strength to strength. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.